Our next speaker has many titles. He's an entrepreneur, investor, and the founder of Braintree, which he sold to PayPal for $800 million in 2013. This year, he's become internet famous as that de-aging guy, the centimillionaire going all in on living better. The man himself prefers the term professional rejuvenation athlete. Whichever title you use, his name is Bryan Johnson, and we're delighted to be joined by him today. Bryan, thank you for joining us.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Bryan, I'm going to open with a deceptively simple, if perhaps slightly rude question. How old are you?
It's complicated. My left ear is 64 from damage as a child, shooting guns and listening to loud music. My heart is 37. My diaphragm is 18. And my cardiovascular capacity is in the 1.5 percentile for a top 1.5% of 18-year-olds. So I'm a few hundred different ages.
And chronologically? That's
46.
46, I see. You spend $2 million a year on medical procedures and analysis. You take more than 100 pills a day, and you follow a grueling diet and exercise regimen in the name of de-aging. Why?
It's a thought experiment I did after selling Braintree Venmo. If you read history, you realize throughout time that anyone who lived at any previous time point was basically living in the past. Their ideas were of the past. Their opinions were of the past. And the future was present for them. It's just they didn't see that yet. So either they hadn't been exposed to it, or they saw it and they thought it was crazy and rejected it. But typically the future takes quite some time to arrive in society's minds. And so to break myself out of the same problem, I did a thought experiment, and I said, imagine I'm in the 25th century and I'm listening to a conversation among people who are observing what we did in the early 21st century that made existence possible in this galaxy. What did we do in the 21st century? What did we figure out? And I spent 10 years working on that problem and thinking about it, and I arrived at a pretty simple solution: don't die. That it is it's just in two words, that basically after a few billion years of evolution on this planet, we're baby steps away from superintelligence. And once you have the power of the gods within reach, the only foe you have is death. And so the entire to-do list for the humanity is don't die, don't kill each other, don't destroy the planet, and prepare for an extraordinary future.
Is that the goal of Blueprint, the protocol you created? Is it ultimately to not die?
It represents the scientific, biological, and philosophical shift we're about to experience in this early 21st century. Death has always been inevitable, and therefore everyone's stories, ideas, plans, aspirations include death as an assumption, death as a known. And I'm suggesting that death may not be inevitable, as it always has been. And if you fully internalize that, it changes every single thing about our existence. And this is what I'm saying before, is if you go back to the 16th century or 15th or 17th century, the future had arrived then. It was very hard to see. And so what I'm suggesting right now is, in this moment, this is potentially the future. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're working hard on your objectives, that's amazing. Also, don't die. So that's what I've tried to do with my protocol. Is I have spent millions of dollars, and the majority of the money has gone to my team of 30 professionals doing extensive research on everything that's ever been published on health span and lifespan. Less so on the therapies I do myself, but it's basically been trying to figure out what is the very best protocol we can develop with today's evidence. And I've made it all freely available for everybody.
Bryan, Marcus Aurelius said, in short, know this: human lives are brief and trivial. Yesterday, a blob of semen. Tomorrow, embalming fluid, ash. As you said, as long as we, as humankind, has been on this earth, the one certainty has been death. Mm-hmm. What would a lifespan look like? What do you predict your lifespan will look like without that final chapter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first is nobody knows. Nobody knows how long and how well we can exist. That has never been the case. I mean, even with the speed of artificial intelligence developing, we can't see 6 months out at this point. And so I'd say that it comes back to this observation. In the past few days, I'm sure many of us have looked both ways before crossing the street, maybe replaced a battery in a smoke detector, buckled a seatbelt, and threw out moldy food. And we do those things so we don't die. And it's a game that every human on this planet plays every single day, don't die. The future is just getting much, much better at not dying.
But what will that look like? To my question, I'm going to follow up here. What do you predict? We are so, over centuries, over millennia, we have a certain lifespan charted out for us that the end is way. If it doesn't end in that way, what do you, if you do indeed live to 150 to 200, if you get to the age, what do you predict your life will look like at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I think the way to think about this is imagining a thought experiment. Yeah, let's imagine we're 1 million years back, speaking to Homo erectus, who had an axe, beginnings of language. And let's say we pose to Homo erectus, tell us about your vision for the future. What could you evolve to become? It would have been impossible for Homo erectus to explain quantum mechanics, or to explain the stock market, or rule of law, or artificial intelligence, or that there's these tiny little microscopic world of atoms and molecules and organisms. It is a sign of foolishness that any of us would dare imagine what's on the other side. We cannot see it. We can't model it. We can't predict it. We can't anticipate it. So that's why it comes back to this really simple philosophy: is the only thing we know is don't die. And it actually has a highly relevant correlation with artificial intelligence. Like, we're trying to build AI that increases the prosperity of the human race. But if you look at the humans right now, like the thing that concerns me the most about the future is humans. Like, we are a destructive, violent species. And, we have our fingers on annihilation weapons, and we do all sorts of bad things to each other all the time. Now, it's gotten a lot better over the years, but still, we're building AI in our image. And that, to me, is concerning. And so if we shifted the zeitgeist and said, we want to build a world where don't die is the philosophy. And that includes how nation states deal with each other. That includes how we think about war. It takes a moment to breathe through this and realize that we've assumed death is inevitable. And from that assumption follows all the rules of society. If we're not going to die, everything we assumed is going to change. And that includes entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs seek immortality or seek their gains. They become martyrs for the companies they build. And that's what I'm really wanting to encourage people. Don't become the martyr. Don't die in your endeavor.
You call yourself a professional rejuvenation athlete, but if life is the greatest adventure, you're also an adventurer in that you are trying to do something that nobody has ever done before.
Yeah.
When you started this journey, it was after you exited Braintree. You described yourself as depressed, overweight, borderline suicidal. You said that your mind was in charge of you, and you decided to take control of that, to take control of your mental and physical health, to engineer a complete transformation. Tell us about those triggers that caused you to completely change your life, and those first few baby steps you took as you begin that process of transformation. What did that look like?
Yeah, there was a particular version of me, Evening Bryan, at 7 p.m. Every night he would overeat. So he would feel the weight of the day. There was all the fires were burning at my companies, this and that to deal with. I had 3 little babies at the time. I was in a challenging relationship. I was depressed out of my mind. And so when 7 p.m. came and the kids were finally in bed, the first thought that came to my mind is what's in the refrigerator, whether it's cookies or brownies or there was junk food in the cupboard. And I could not stop myself from trying to soothe my pain by overeating. No matter how good I was throughout the day, no matter how much I told myself I would do it, I did it. And so finally one day, just being miserable for years, I said, Evening Bryan, you're fired. You make my life miserable. And I basically made this rule for myself that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., this version of me was not authorized to eat because he was in a really debilitated state. He couldn't make good decisions. And it allowed me to basically break me out into different pieces and say, I'm Morning Bryan and Dad Bryan and Entrepreneur Bryan and all these different versions of Bryan. They have different willpower and they have different goals and they have different ambitions, and they sometimes conflict. And so I had to go through this process of basically goal alignment where I said, okay, I am a collection of 35 plus trillion cells. How do I get my 35 trillion cells to cooperate, to want one thing, not 40 different things? Because Morning Bryan is like, we're going to have a great day, we're going to eat well, we're going to exercise, we're going to be nice to everybody, we're going to be extremely productive. And then nighttime Bryan comes like, fuck that, we're going to eat the brownies, we're going to eat the cookies, and we're going to have some additional potato chips. And like they're different Bryans, and they fight and they have different goals. And so I'm like literally two different people in the same day. And I think this is all a relatable experience for us humans. And so the goal for Blueprint has basically been to say, can I as an individual goal align myself as an example for the whole world? We talk about goal alignment between AI and humans, but like we're a disaster of goals as a species. How are you going to align AI to humans? It's just like very, very hard. And so I wanted to do the example with myself first.
So tell me and tell us about the Blueprint protocol, what you and your team of 30 plus scientists that you mentioned have developed to change our behavior patterns. Put simply, you follow this Blueprint protocol. So what does a day in the life of Bryan Johnson look like?
Yeah, the day begins the night before when I go to bed at 8:30 every single night. I just scored perfect 100% sleep score using my Whoop wearable for 6 straight months. Nobody in the world had ever done that before. And I wanted to show, just like the 4-minute mile or Amelia Earhart flying over the Atlantic Ocean, that a human can get reliably high quality sleep every night, and an entrepreneur at that. And so I sleep extraordinarily well, and it has made me the happiest and most stable and most coherent person I've ever been in my entire life. My best ideas I've ever come up with has been in this window of time. And that's a second. Then the next morning, I wake up around 4 or 5 in the morning. I have a 4-hour routine. I exercise for an hour. I eat a few pounds of vegetables. I take 60 different pills. And then I have 2 other meals throughout the day, 40 additional pills. And then I have a few doctor's appointments throughout the day. I build several companies woven into that. But overall, what we've been trying to do is we basically said, if we explore the scientific evidence of everything that's out there and we try to create the perfect protocol, like for example, with my diet, every single calorie has to fight for its life. I've become the most measured human in history. And so we have details on my body of exactly what does what and why. And so we've basically been honing this thing in to say, how would you create the perfect protocol for health and wellness? And like this, the results have been really compelling. Like I slowed my speed of aging by 31 years. I now accumulate aging damage slower than 88% of 18-year-olds, for example. I have a total bone mineral density in the top 0.02% of 30-year-olds, which is age min for that test. And so it's really compelling. I'm really been surprised at how well it has worked. I mean, I really beat up my mind and my body really badly for a few decades. And for my body to bounce back this fast and this well is really encouraging to me.
To your point about happiness, since you began this journey, you're thinner, you have more muscle, you look better, and you're more globally famous than you were for your significant achievements as an entrepreneur. These are all things that we strive for to be happy. So let me ask you a simple question. Are you happy?
Never been happier in my entire life. I feel so excited to be alive. You know, people look at this and they say, why is he so scared of death? And I'm like, I want to live. Like I have a love for life, an insatiable appetite to live. Like we are baby steps away from potentially the most extraordinary existence in the entire galaxy. Like why would we not be jumping up and down of like, holy hell, are we in a pretty interesting situation? Now, I realize for most of the world right now, life kind of sucks. Like I've been depressed. I know what that feels like. So from many people's perspectives, I can realize why they say like, actually, life kind of sucks and it's really hard. I don't think I want to carry on. That's with how things are right now. It's not how things could be. And to think about that, we have to imagine ourselves 10, 20 years in the future, which we know, like it's very hard to speak for our future self or future reality. So I think that it would be best if we had an infectious love of life and of what's going to come. And I realize there's a lot of fear and a lot of doom. Those things may be true. Like we may end up killing ourselves. Like AI may be awful. Like sure, but you know what? In the meantime, I think we should give this a good go because like the opportunity, maybe this is the first time it's happened in our galaxy. Maybe, right? Like it's our chance to have this win.
I love that optimism. Bryan, you made headlines this year for some of the more extreme therapies that you've tried, such as infusing a liter of your 17-year-old son's blood plasma. What is the most extreme thing that you've done so far? And how far are you willing to go in your pursuit of longevity?
Yeah, so with the with the plasma infusions, I did 6 1-liter infusions over 6 months, 1 from my son, and then the other 5 were from a 20-year-old donor that was following a Blueprint diet. I saw no effect from the plasma infusions. However, I gave 1 liter of plasma to my father, and he donated 1 liter himself, just taking 1 out. His speed of aging slowed by 13%. So a huge difference. Like my father is 70 years old, And for his speed of aging to have that dramatic of a drop was just gigantic from just one plasma infusion. So like it basically says this plasma, the evidence was interesting and we wanted to experiment with it. It didn't work on me because I'm already pretty optimized. So it didn't stack. But for someone like my father, it made a dramatic change. And so I thought it was really interesting that we really put it to the test. We shared all the data publicly. And this is one of the more extreme things people, have done. It's been very quiet and hush hush. I made the whole thing public. I just recently did my first gene therapy just a few weeks ago. I have my next one planned. So, I mean, there's really nothing I would do. We're very cautious. We look at this stuff very thoroughly. We're not reckless in any way. But really, there's nothing on my list that would not be done.
Your journey may sound familiar to many of us in a much less extreme version. We've all had periods in our life, perhaps, where we started eating better, exercising more, getting more sleep, we're feeling better. And that's always a finite period. And then something happens. We get busier, we have a kid. Something happens in our life where we go back into, I think, what's known now as goblin mode, where we're just busy, we don't have time, we sleep less, we eat worse, we exercise less. You're keeping that going. You are the extreme example of how, saying goodbye to goblin mode and living your best self, can be sustainable. What advice would you have for the entrepreneurs in the room for how they can take care of themselves first?
So
that they're able to give more to their teams, to building their companies, to shaping the world with their endeavors.
First, it's important to realize when you're sleep deprived and you have a bad diet, you're half dead. Now, when you're half dead, you don't realize you're half dead because you're inebriated. Just like when you drink some alcohol and you feel a little bit drunk, you can't really tell if you're drunk or not until someone's like, yo, you really aren't there, right? So we can't really tell our own level of drunkenness in life when we're poorly rested and we're eating bad. Now, in this situation, you are the person responsible for making decisions on behalf of a whole bunch of people. You really want to be your best self. Now, I'm speaking to you as if I was speaking to myself, because I really wish I would have had a positive influence in my life when I was building this. So you can be every bit as ambitious you are now. You can take over the world as you want to. Great. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself and do a few basics. Get your sleep every single night. Never compromise. Treat it as your most important meeting for the entire day. Optimize your sleep. It's the single biggest yield of anything you do. And then 2 is fire your worst version. Now, you mentioned your peanut butter, right? Like everyone's got a thing. So identify the thing that you do that makes your life miserable, whether it's overeating or whether it's smoking or whether it's drinking or whatever addiction you have. Face it down and change it. So just do one power law change of a bad thing and get sleep right, and your life is going to change. Now, if you want, you can add on more things like a good diet, some exercise. Like those are all additives, but like just basically make a stand, choose to treat yourself in the best possible way, and get the mental clarity so you can think straight.
You've had yourself, as we mentioned at the top, a successful career as an entrepreneur, and you're still building businesses. You're best known for building payment software, Braintree, which later became Braintree Venmo, which you exited in 2013. What did you learn on your entrepreneurial journey that you are applying to this chapter of your life, which is dedicated to longevity?
There's a quote I love. If you want to build a ship, don't organize the men and give them tools, teach them to yearn for the sea. I butchered that quote a little bit, but you really need to point at the vision and the destination, and then all the logistics just kind of sort their way out. But get the team rallied around an endeavor that's bigger than any one of them. And that's what that's what we all want to do. We want to be part of something meaningful. We want to be part of something timeless. We want to be epic. We want to be respected by our peers. Like our needs are so similar. And so just get the algorithm pointed in that direction. A lot of people think that you can't take care of yourself and be epic. They think that you have to sleep under your desk, that you have to have this mythology of coding for multiple days in a row because that's the hero story you want to hear. Don't fall prey to history's primitive mythology. There's a new mythology that's here right now that sleeps well and eats well and prioritizes health and is still epic. Be the new model of entrepreneur that other people want to emulate. Because I tell you, this is going to be the hero in just a few years' time. This is going to be, you're going to hear stories coming out that are doing this. It's not going to be the person who's ragged and under the desk sleeping of like, wow, it's amazing that they were able to do that. It's now past.
Bryan Johnson, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to go to the gym. You've inspired me. But it's been fantastic talking with you. Thanks for making the time.
Yes.
Speaking at the Tatler Gen.T Summit. It's so easy to not look at ourselves in the mirror in the way that we perhaps always should. And this conversation has been a useful way to do that. And I was joking about going to the gym right now, but I think we've all learned about looking after ourselves first so that we can put our best selves into the world and the best selves into the businesses that we're building. Thank you so much, Bryan. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.